who by no stretch of imagination was ever in the Bharatiya Janata Party. But since both Mr. Chandan Mitra and Mr. Arvind Kejriwal have been extolling the virtues of the Karnataka Lok Ayukt Act, may I very respectfully point out that the Karnataka Lok Ayukt Act was legislated by the Karnataka Assembly. So therefore, in our federal system, you cannot take away from the states the right to legislate on matters which fall within their jurisdiction.
I agree
So insofar as the point of common man's corruption is concerned, insofar as the point of common man's corruption is concerned, the state Lok Ayukts cover the state services, they cover the central schemes which are implemented by the state governments, and therefore, because they are right there on the ground, they have,
But why are you insulating the Prime Minister?
In order to be able to deliver, a report or a proper investigative process, then somebody sitting far removed in Delhi.
But Mr. Tiwari, fundamental question, all of India wants to know, why are you so hell-bent on insulating the Prime Minister? And this logic doesn't make any sense, because the government version of the bill says, and I'll get Arvind on this, it says any Prime Minister only comes under the office, under the ambit after demitting office. However, there's a 7-year delimitation clause, limitation clause. This is such a contradiction. How can one initiate inquiry against the Prime Minister, for example, who serves 2 consecutive terms? How do you?
Right, I mean, you see, Mr. Goswami, allow me to answer that. As I was earlier pointing out, that the cabinet has taken a conscious decision not to include the Prime Minister while he serves. Since, the bill may come before a standing committee on which I serve, so therefore I want to keep an open mind on it. But, it goes back to the point which Chandan was making earlier. If all the public servants are covered under the Prevention of Corruption Act, if everybody is equal before the Indian Penal Code, then it would raise a very fundamental question. Do you require a Lok Ayukt?
No, why you're taking the debate back? Take it forward. My question to you didn't understand. You didn't answer my question, Manish. How do you initiate inquiry against a Prime Minister who serves 2 consecutive terms? Because you have a limitation clause of 7 years.
Well, if you possibly would have studied the law of limitation, Mr. Goswami, in the case of limitation, the courts have always exercised a fair amount of flexibility, a fair amount of discretion and common sense in applying the law of limitation.
So, no, 1 minute.
The law of limitation as it stands constituted is not absolute.
Sir,
in fact, most of the government matters which come up before the Supreme
I'll tell you the contradiction.
Are at times almost 2 years beyond the limitation period, so that limitation gets controlled.
Mr. Tiwari, I know you are an eminent lawyer, but let me tell you the contradiction. I know you are an eminent lawyer, let me tell you the contradiction.
Allow me to complete, since you raised the limitation point, allow me to complete. So depending upon the gravity of the offence which is alleged, the Lok Ayukt in his discretion can always relax the limitation, and I think no court of law is going to strike it down because of that.
Sir, your cabinet approved draft of the bill provides for a time limitation of 7 years from the date of cognizance of the offence. In the case of the Prime Minister, any reading of the bill says the limitation will apply after he or she demits office. That is the contradiction here.
I'm astounded, Arnab.
Dr. Mitra.
I'm just one point. I mean, just one point. I just want to ask Manish Tiwari.
Limitation. Chandan, allow me to complete, and I will come to you. My simple rebut to that is the law of limitation is approved by Parliament. After all, no law can be made without the approval of Parliament. But you see courts day in and day out exercising their discretion and really relaxing the rule of limitation.
This is getting extremely confusing. 1 minute. Dr. Mitra,
no, 1 minute. Mr. Manish Tiwari is a lawyer, a very good lawyer, so he knows how to weave a web of kind of confusing things around us. But simply put in a layman's way, I don't understand law. But let me say that you see, first you leave the Prime Minister out, serving Prime Minister out. Then you say after he demits office, but we can probe. But there's a limitation of 7 years. Now Mr. Tiwari says that the courts have been flexible on these issues. Now that means you are saying leaving the whole thing to a court's judgment as to whether the Prime Minister can be proceeded against even after 7 years. if you want him prosecuted
Which
in
means
5
complete
years' time,
insulation.
you go to court. Court will try to.
Which gives
court,
complete
he says,
insulation.
will take a favorable view.
Yeah, well,
no, why go to the court?
No, I'm going to
I mean,
Arvind
breaking the law.
Kejriwal now. Now I'm going to
Why are
Arvind
you not doing
Kejriwal.
that?
Now I'm going to Arvind Kejriwal. Arvind,
Straight away.
Arvind, 1 minute. Manish, Manish, 1 minute. I don't want to get caught in a legal tangle. 1 minute, 1 minute. I don't want to get caught. I want to go to fundamental point.
Sure.
Fundamental point to Arvind Kejriwal, you pioneered the movement along with Anna Hazare. You're on the streets today. You say you are going to start a movement from the 16th of August. But tell me, and I hope Chandan Mitra and Manish Tiwari don't take offense to this. But tell me, Arvind, how are you convinced, Arvind Kejriwal, that this is not one big setup between the Congress and the BJP? You see, they will fight. 1 minute. Allow me, sir. I have a right to interpret. I'm not seeing conspiracies. I have a right to interpret. This bill has been rejected on 8 occasions in the past. Now, they will fight on the issue of the Prime Minister. They will fight so hard, Arvind, on the issue of the Prime Minister that the bill will get pushed. It will get into some legal issues. It will get pushed on this issue of the Prime Minister. Don't you fear that, Arvind?
I do agree with you, Arnab. Firstly, I'll just take half a minute to respond to Mr. Manish Tiwari's thing. That Lokayukta is a federal, this state subject, and I want to correct him that this is a concurrent list subject, and the central government, if it wanted to set up a uniform structure of Lokayuktas all across the country through this bill, which we had been demanding, they could have very well done it. But they have not done it, and they have avoided doing it. And now I am told by many eminent parliamentarians that even if Parliament wants, they can't include Lokayuktas in this bill. This bill needs to be withdrawn and resubmitted in the Parliament if we want Lokayuktas to be included in this bill. And that is what is most important for us. The debate on PM, judiciary and all is important. But what is most important for us is inclusion of lower judiciary, setting up of state Lokayuktas through the same law, and including public grievances in this bill. Violation of citizens' charter should be penalized. The officers should be penalized. These are the most important things. And if the debate does not take place in firstly, let me just tell you that the government has presented a fait accompli in the form of this bill. As I said, even if the Parliament wants, or even if the Standing Committee wants, they cannot expand the scope and they cannot alter the structure of this bill. What needs to be done is that this bill is withdrawn and resubmitted, a more comprehensive bill, or the government submits an amendment bill incorporating all the points that we are demanding.
Does the BJP back that? Does the BJP back that, Chandan Mitra? Does the BJP back that?
Now you see, now 1 minute, yes. There is a forum. Before Manish, 1 minute. I have yielded to you before. 1 minute. I'm saying, look, Manish, a question has been asked to me. Let me just reply. What I'm saying is that if the government is not deceitful, then the government will seriously listen to the deliberations of the Standing Committee. All these matters, I'm sure, that Mr. Arvind Kejriwal is talking about will be proposed and discussed in the Standing Committee. If the government is flexible, they will incorporate all the various new suggestions that come up there, and I'm sure that there is enough scope to amend the final piece of legislation that the government will bring after the Standing Committee report is submitted, unless they have made up their mind to absolutely.
They have made up their mind. Are you in any doubt?
And stick to the exact.
Are you in any doubt that they've made up their mind? Are you in any doubt they've made up their mind on the inclusion of Prime Minister?
I still hope not. I still hope not. I hope that the government will be flexible as public pressure mounts, as pressure from other political parties mounts. I hope the government will be flexible on this point, but then if they have made up their mind, they will have to pay for the consequences that follow.
Okay, now Manish Tiwari rebuts Arvind Kejriwal. Go on, Manish.
May I make a very short point?
Yeah, to Arvind, go on.
Arvind Kejriwal, was talking about the legislative competence actually lying in the concurrent list. Presuming what Mr. Arvind Kejriwal is saying is correct, and indeed it is correct, why would Mr. Arvind Kejriwal and his colleagues endeavor to abolish the existing Lokayukts? You have 17 Lokayukts in different states. Some of them may be very good, some of them may not be as good. So therefore, the need really is to adopt best practices from various states, work with state governments to see that those acts are appropriately amended. Why do you want to reinvent the wheel and abolish all those lokayuks and create a completely different structure which tramples upon the federal rights of the states?
You have yourself been questioning the absence of a structure and the nature of the lokayuk laws in different states. Therefore, your party raising the Jharkhand issue, Manish, is proof of the fact that there is the lack of uniformity. Lack of uniformity.
That's precisely the point. You know, uniformity, Mr. Goswami, in a diverse federal structure like ours, possibly is not the
how is the definition of corruption different
and that
in the federal structure?
That is why in the Constitution, that is why in the Constitution you have a state list, you have a concurrent list, and you have a central list.
So you have,
if everything had to be uniform, you did not need three different lists.
In 25 states, you have 25 definitions of corruption.
You can't say corruption. I'm sorry, you can't say corruption in Maharashtra is different from corruption in Assam.
Precisely.
So you have to have a common yardstick for corruption. Corruption is corruption, period.
Mr. Chandan Mitra, then why in Jharkhand do you have an act which is different from the one in Karnataka?
Why don't you correct it?
Let's not make an argument which is completely irrelevant and rhetorical.
I think there should be uniformity. I believe there should be uniformity, and let us work towards it. Now the issue has come, we should work towards uniformity.
The answer lies in adopting best practices, not abolishing it whole.
Yes, I agree with you. Let the government of the day come forward with the changes, and let us then, on the basis of a model guideline proposed by the centre, let the Lokayukta acts of various states be amended to bring them on a common platform.
Well, I'm going to see where this goes. I'm going to take a last question to Arvind.
The standing committee would discuss all this and
the standing committee is not that binding.
Let's not be circumspect about parliament. Let's not be circumspect about representative institutions.
Certainly
not.
Allow
them to function.
My last question is to Arvind. Arvind, tell me, did your act of burning the bill today indicate in any way that you have no faith in parliamentary democracy?
No, I don't agree with that, Arnab. As I said, the government has presented a fait accompli to the parliament. No, it is not an overreaction. What else should we do? You suggest, Arnab. We have engaged with the government. We have had several dialogues with the government. The government refuses to accept our position. And today the government has presented a bill in the parliament, which the parliament cannot amend beyond a point. So the government has presented a fait accompli before the people of this country and before the parliament. Even if the standing committee wants, it cannot include state lokayuktas in this ambit because it will change the scope of the law and the structure of the law.
Okay.
So therefore, there is no option left
for us. You are inviting responses. Manish is responding and so is Chandan Mitra. Quick, last round of response.
May I suggest a solution to Mr. Arvind Kejriwal by giving a historical example? You know, not many years ago, you had a chief minister of a state who's a current chief minister actually burning the constitution of India. And that is Mr. Prakash Singh Badal, who was the chief minister of our state. And in Assam and various places, the same thing was emulated. Ultimately, all of them realized that the method of working in a democracy is to come and participate, to be a part of the process rather than exclude yourself from it and be an agitator all the time. You know, agitation does have a certain value in democracy, but let me tell you, being a professional agitator for the last 25 years, that beyond a point in time, the law of diminishing returns kicks in.
No, we'll see what happens on August 16th. That will be tested on August 16th. That will be tested on 16th August. Yes, Dr. Mitra.
To what Arvind Kejriwal has said, Parliament is supreme, Parliament is sovereign. And therefore, when he expresses skepticism that there is a fait accompli and the Parliament cannot change it beyond a point, I don't agree. I don't agree. There is public pressure and public opinion matters, and I hope the government is flexible, and if it is so, every letter of the existing Lokpal bill that has been brought forward can be changed.
I hope it happens.
I can tell you that the BJP will work at least towards major changes in this bill.
Sir, I would just like to remind you at the end, all attempts to bring the bill in. 8 times this bill has been brought in. 8 times this bill has lapsed because of the dissolution of the respective Lok Sabhas. We hope that doesn't happen, and we hope we don't have to wait 2.5 years for that. Manish, Chandan Mitra, and of course Arvind Kejriwal, thank you very much for that fantastic debate on the News Hour tonight.